The critics of the release of the Senate intelligence report say it will have a threat, it will threaten American lives around the world. Does the fact that you all have had interactions with embassies about security mean that you share that concern?
Well, of course, protecting our men and women who serve overseas is one of our biggest priorities. And in the months leading up to this, we talked to our chiefs of mission on the ground about what we need to do to prepare for it. We know there's strong emotions about this. People in the United States have strong emotions about it. So right now, we've been preparing. We've taken some precautions at certain embassies, but we haven't received any actionable intelligence or threats against embassies. That's a good sign. We're going to keep tracking it day by day. But that certainly has been a factor.
But so you share the concern of those who say, not that you oppose the release of the report necessarily, you share the concerns of those who say it could have an impact around the world in a negative way in terms of threats or actual violence to Americans?
Well, as you know, you always have to weigh these different pieces, and we certainly have to prepare for the reaction, and we've been doing that for months now.
Have any foreign countries contacted the department, the secretary of the department, to express concern or about the release of the report?
Well, we started doing our own outreach weeks ago, months ago about this, and the Secretary's been involved in that, a number of high-level officials.
Since the report's come out, have you heard from foreign governments that have called and said this is a problem?
Well, we've done a lot of those calls since the report came out, proactively, because we knew that governments would be interested in this, they'd be concerned about it, they'd want to see what happened. So, sure, we've heard back from countries, we've reached out to countries, it's been a back and forth.
When Secretary Kerry made the phone call that we now know about to Senator Feinstein, it's still a little unclear to me. We know that he called. But
yes.
Why did he call, and what did he hope to get out of that call?
Well, you guys have been covering Washington a long time. They've been friends for 20 years. They've known each other for a long time. He felt, we knew the report was about to be released or soon would be released. He's the guy who the Senate passed, not unanimously, but with a great majority
So far, this answer is what we call in the Senate a filibuster.
Well, listen, I'm getting to my point here. And he felt that part of his job is to reach out to people like former colleagues and talk to them about where he has concerns, where he thinks issues should be raised.
Was he calling to ask for a delay?
Well, he wanted to talk about the timing. Is it the right timing to release it? Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm hearing around the world. But, we said to her, it's up to you to determine the timing, but I want you to know everything I know.
But he would have preferred for it to be later?
I think he wanted to raise the issue and have a discussion about it. But, he didn't go to her house and protest the release.
No,
he just had a conversation with a former colleague.
Right, okay.
What would you say are the highlights of American diplomacy in 2014?
I think a couple things, if you look back at this year. There's a new unity government in Afghanistan. That took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get there, but that's certainly progress. They're moving forward. A year ago, Iraq was barreling towards a very bad situation as it relates to ISIL and a divided government. Now we have new leadership that's trying to rule in a more inclusive way. Iran, we're plugging away, we're chugging along on the agreement there. It's hard work, but it's still in play, and we still feel it can be done.
So I think some Americans would look at that list and say Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, and say if those are your leads on success, it's not been a great year. Maybe you've kept worse things from happening, but you've been a great year for achievements. Is that a fair
I would disagree with that. Part of the job of any Secretary of State or any administration is to deal with crises. We had a lot of crises this year. There are other issues like climate change. That's a proactive issue, an important priority for us that we've made big progress on. We have a climate deal with China. There's ongoing negotiations now. We're trying to get countries around the world to commit to targets, and we made a lot of progress this year on that issue.
So stick with that issue for a second and just talk about that a little bit. It seems to me that's an issue that Secretary Kerry deserves a lot of credit for and that he put a lot of time into, and could be something that's kind of a legacy issue for him. Talk about how, from his point of view, in terms of travel and outreach, how did he put that deal together?
Yeah, I would say, when I first talked to him about coming to the State Department, this was one of the first issues he raised. And he cares very deeply about it. He long has. He met his wife in Rio, so it's kind of in his heart and soul. He has been working on this issue with the Chinese, and specifically in putting together that deal during every meeting. And just a couple of months ago, he hosted, actually, the Chinese in Boston, and he had a dinner at his house and wanted to have some time just to kind of take your ties off, be relaxed, talk about these tough issues, and really think that was a turning point.
Did the Chinese actually take their ties off?
They did.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that wasn't just an analogy.
Right.
That was real.
Or a metaphor. Well, with the question that Mark and I asked, the last thing on climate, we asked this question a lot in the week that the deal was announced. It seems strange to us that there seemed to have been so little done to build support around that deal in the business community, in other kinds of allies that might have come out when the deal was announced to be in support of it. So it ended up getting a lot of criticism and not a lot of defense from outside of the administration. Do you have any sense of why that is?
You know, it's a good question. I would say in our view that's not the end, that's the beginning. Because really it's a marking point leading up to the negotiations in Paris next year. So it's an important point, but it's sending a message to the world that two of the biggest emitters, China and the United States, are going to put strong targets in place.